Chapter 5. A Deal with an Angel by Nim Frostblight Share. The sleek walls of gold and blood marble painted a picture of excess, as a suited figure walked confidently over a velvet red carpet to a throne of gold and silver ornamented with a cushion of lavish white fur. The throne faced a large window looking down into the slums of greed. It towered hundreds of meters above the ground below, the edge of the building inches from the cliff of high society. The figure sat down, his white-coated appearance matching the fur he lay on, and his green and gold-tailored suit created a contrast of excess that only a few could imagine. The Halhound-like man grinned, revealing his gold-coated fangs as his snout curled. "Mammon, sir, I have the latest spending report for you," a small demon with dark brown skin and blue lines said, holding a book firmly in his hand. The small demon was wearing a black suit with silver trimming and a matching top hat. Mammon, the sin of greed's eyes glanced over to the small demon as he reached out his hand, his claws extending as shiny bracelets clacked together. "That will be all, Malak," Mammon responds, his words precise and content as he takes the book from his underling. "I must ask, sir, my job is to spend your vast riches, however." "At the rate you are splurging," Malak began to say before Mammon cut him off with a quick growl and glare. "Very well, sir," Malak said, his shoulders sinking back as he quickly left the room. Mammon simply tossed the book to the velvet carpet as he continued to look out the window. "Now, Mammon, that's no way to rule," an ethereal voice said, as a sudden flash of white and golden light appeared in front of the Lord of Sin. Mammon crunched his snout as his eyes adjusted to the light, as it faded, revealing an angelic figure standing in front of him, brown curled hair, faint yellow eyes, wearing a dark robe that had white wings protruding from it. "Sethariel? What an unpleasant surprise," Mammon said, his posture still relaxed in his throne as he brought his fangs to bear. "What do you want?" "Nothing of too much import. I put another piece in play, you see, and I would like you to do what you do best," the angel said, his face turning into a distorted smile that barely fit between his ears. "Really now? Another piece in your corrupted storytelling?" Mammon mocked, his ears perked up slightly around his fedora. "Corrupt storytelling? You offend me, Sin," the angel said, moving closer to the throne. "Everything I write is true in my eyes." "So, why do you think I would help you? My debt has been paid in full," Mammon asked, his eyes locked on the angel's. Sethariel picked up the book that Mammon had tossed to the floor. "Your confidence is cute, Mammon, but you know the rules of your station, and it looks like you are coming up short," Sethariel said, flipping through the book's pages. "Impossible. I am the sin of greed, the keeper of riches," Mammon said in aggressive offense as he snatched the book from Sethariel. Sethariel looked at him with a faint smirk rising as he watched Mammon's face change quickly from anger to desperation. Mammon's eyes glanced up at the angel as he slammed the book shut. "Fine, and I assume my assistants will correct these numbers." Mammon didn't ask but demanded. "Of course. You played your part perfectly. However, your inability to control your natural urges made your ambition crumble," Sethariel said, his smirk widening into a twisted smile of pure pleasure. Sethariel paced around Mammon's throne, running a finger along the golden ornaments. "All I need is a simple favor, one that would grant you a permanent place as the sin of greed," Sethariel whispered. Mammon's ears perked up. "Permanent?" His grin widened, matching the angel's. "I'm so glad you still have a glint of adventure in your eyes, Mammon. Now let's talk business. I have sent a human to hell for causing unintentional collateral damage to my plans, and you will corrupt him. Another one of your trials. It's been 1,000 years since your last punishment." Mammon responded, his eyes tightening as his canine grin revealed his back teeth. "If it's corruption you want, then corruption you will get." "Perfect," Sethariel responded as light began to form around him again. "But why not just kill him? I'd be easy," Mammon asked. "It would seem he has already made a connection here in hell," Sethariel said as he disappeared, and the angelic light faded. "It makes total erasure difficult," his ethereal voice fading with a final echo. Mammon's tail wagged slightly before he glared at it. "This will be most profitable. Folk color to my attention," Mammon yells as a sudden swoosh of air blew through his fur. Mammon's attention moved up, revealing a woman with tall black boots and fish-like scales that ended just above her knees. The woman was wearing a skin-tight top that exposed her shoulder with patches of scales spread on the tips that held a loose jacket that only wrapped around her arms. She had short light blue hair with small black crooked horns and dark blue demon-like wings. The woman kneeled in front of Mammon, her eyes cold and distant as she bowed her head. "My lord?" Folcolor asked as she held her posture, stiff and clean. "I have a job. I would like you to complete my most trusted general," Mammon said, his words kind but authoritative. "A human has been found in hell, and I need him corrupted." "Corrupted?" Folcolor asked as she tilts her head up to see Mammon sitting relaxed on his throne. "My lord, you have many servants who are much better at corrupting mortals," she suggested in obedient protest. "I do. However, this job is important, and you are the only one that I can trust with a non-lethal command," Mammon said under his breath with annoyance. "I need the human alive. Bring him to me and I will corrupt him myself." Mammon explained, his words sank into four-color-like instinct as she nodded. "I will leave immediately, my lord." "Good. And Folcolor, everything I own is at your disposal for this. This must not be a failure," Mammon said, with an approving look, but under his grin was a threat. "Everything, my lord?" Folcolor mumbled, the instinctive obedience she felt slipping at his generosity. "This must be very important." "More than you could possibly imagine, my Godic general," Mammon said, standing up and looking out the window that overlooked the circle of greed. "Now go and bring me my prize," Mammon said, not turning to face her as his grin widened, revealing his fangs as he cackled sinisterly. In a sudden flash of blue swirling water, faux color disappeared, leaving Mammon alone in his throne room as he continued to laugh. "Hey, Theo, keep your damn hood up," Jaxa whispered as the two walked through the broken streets of the slums. "Sorry," Theo responded by putting his hood over his blonde hair and placing his hands in his pockets. His green eyes glanced around, seeing broken down metal huts stacked on each other for multiple stories and sinners walking around with suspicious sunken eyes. The slums were a shocking difference from the area they had arrived in. The marble and stone carvings were replaced by cracked cobblestone and puddles of murky liquid, and the sinner went from wearing lavish coats to rags and a suspicious amount of missing limbs. "Do you know where the target is?" Theo asked, picking up his pace to match Jax's. "Not exactly, but where do you think we can find out?" Jaxa responded, her whiskers moving as she grinned widely. "I don't know, a bar or something," Theo answered as his steps stammered to avoid a hooded sinner with lizard-like features. "This is greed and information is a currency," Jaxa said, grabbing his arm and pulling him away from another sinner. "And gambling is the best way to earn a quick buck down here," she said, pulling him in front of a small building. The building was dilapidated but looked more sturdy than most others nearby. It had boarded up windows, which flashing lights slipped. The two walked inside as the smell of smoke quickly filled his nose. "Just keep close and avoid the slot machines," Jaxa said as they moved through the impossibly crowded casino. Extreme colors and scents invaded Theo's senses as his heart began to race from the sensory overload. Jaxa looked behind her, her eyes slightly widened. "Hey, calm down, human, it's not that bad." "Sorry, I just don't do well with crowds," Theo responded, his eyes trying to focus on Jaxa. She looked at him and pulled him closer to her. "Just focus on the job, and keep your eyes on me," she said with an almost sympathetic glance. Theo's heart began to settle as they moved further into the casino, his eyes fixed on her black fur, and his thoughts repeat one word: trust. Jaxa pulled him to a small door with a slot at eye level. She knocked on the door with a vigorous thump. The eye slit opened, revealing a set of jeweled eyes. "Allotment?" a muffled grumble said from behind the door. Jaxa held up a small coin to the slit. Suddenly, the slit shut aggressively, and the door slowly opened. "Come on," Jaxa said, pulling his arm gently. The two walked through the door into a dark room with only one red light above a circular table. Around the table were 5 chairs. 3 were taken, leaving exactly 2 for Theo and Jaxa. Theo's eyes locked on the empty chairs, as his eyebrow raised slightly with suspicion. At the table, the 3 figures looked up at them. "Welcome in," one of the figures said. The one who spoke was a sinner who resembled a mako shark, jagged teeth poking out of a thin smile, his body slim yet with obvious muscle, portraying a confident posture. He was wearing a fancy red robe, with gemstone piercing poking out of his dorsal fin. "Take a seat, sinners," the man said, his thin smile widening, and his blackened pupils spreading to cover the white and yellow edges of his eyes. Jaxa took a seat at the table as Theo hesitantly followed, sitting next to her. The red glow of the single light caused his eyes to wince as he looked at the other 2 unknown figures sitting next to him. One was a hooded figure with glowing blue eyes. The figure's hands were small, with long fingernails painted in blue polish. The other figure was a misty black shadow with distorted purple eyes that glowed in the dim red light. "What brings heretics down to the